The night I discovered my wife was sleeping with my best friend started like any other Thursday. At least, that's what I thought. If someone had told me that within the next few hours my entire life would collapse, and that the two people I trusted most would destroy everything we'd built, I would have laughed in their face. But life has a cruel way of proving you wrong. My name is Ethan Parker. I was 38 years old, living in a quiet suburb outside Seattle, Washington. For 13 years, I had been married to my wife, Lauren. We had a beautiful house, 2 kids, and what I believed was a strong marriage. Sure, we had problems. Every marriage does. Lauren had been distant lately. She spent more time on her phone, smiled at messages she never showed me, and seemed emotionally unavailable whenever I tried to talk. But I blamed stress. I blamed work. I blamed myself. I never imagined another man was involved. Especially not him. Ryan Mitchell, my best friend. The guy who stood beside me at my wedding. The man I trusted enough to hand the keys to my house whenever we traveled. Ryan and I had been friends for nearly 20 years. We played college baseball together, started businesses together, celebrated promotions, birthdays, and major life milestones together. He was practically family. That Thursday evening, I finished work earlier than expected. I decided to surprise Lauren with dinner. I stopped at her favorite Italian restaurant and picked up takeout. As I drove home, I remember feeling proud. Proud of the life we'd built. Proud of the future ahead of us. I had no idea that future was already gone. When I pulled into the driveway, something felt off immediately. Lauren's car wasn't there. That wasn't unusual. But Ryan's black BMW was parked across the street. At first, I smiled. Probably came by to borrow something, I muttered. I carried the food inside. The house was empty, silent. No Lauren, no kids, no Ryan. I called Lauren, straight to voicemail. I texted her. No response. An uneasy feeling settled into my stomach. Then I noticed something strange. Lauren's laptop was sitting open on the kitchen counter. Normally, she never left it unlocked. Ever. The screen was glowing, and a message notification appeared. I wasn't trying to snoop. I swear I wasn't. But one sentence flashed across the screen before I could look away. I miss you already. Tonight was perfect. My heart stopped. The message was from Ryan. For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe. Then another message appeared. I wish we didn't have to hide anymore. The room started spinning. I stared at the screen. Frozen. Terrified. Praying there was another explanation. But deep down, I already knew. And what I found next would destroy every illusion I still had. I stood frozen in my kitchen, staring at Lauren's laptop. My hands were shaking so badly that I almost dropped my phone. Every instinct told me to close the screen and walk away. To pretend I hadn't seen anything. To believe there was some innocent explanation. But another part of me, the part that already knew the truth, needed answers. I slowly sat down at the counter. The message notification was still visible. Ryan's name stared back at me like a punch to the chest. For a few seconds, I couldn't bring myself to click it. Then I did. The conversation opened, and my entire world shattered. The first messages seemed harmless enough. Jokes, inside references, conversations about the kids. But as I scrolled upward, the tone changed. Fast. There were hundreds of messages. Thousands, actually. Months worth. Maybe longer. My stomach twisted. I kept reading. Every sentence felt like another knife. Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you. I wish Ethan knew what he's missing. My vision blurred. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The woman I loved. The man I considered my brother. Laughing about me. Mocking me. Using my trust as cover. Then I found photos. I wish I hadn't. God, I wish I hadn't. Pictures of them together. At restaurants. Hotels. Weekend trips. Places Lauren had told me she was visiting with coworkers. One photo nearly made me throw up. Ryan had taken Lauren to the lake cabin my father left me before he died. The same cabin where Lauren and I spent our honeymoon. The same cabin where I proposed. I stared at the image in disbelief. Lauren was smiling into the camera. Ryan's arm wrapped around her waist. They looked happy. Genuinely happy. Like I didn't exist. Like our 13-year marriage meant nothing. I felt physically sick. Then I found voice messages. One of them was only 30 seconds long. But it changed everything. I pressed play. Lauren's voice filled the kitchen. Soft. Loving. The kind of voice she hadn't used with me in years. I love you, Ryan. Silence. Then Ryan laughed softly. I love you too. I stopped the recording immediately. I couldn't take another second. The room felt smaller, harder to breathe in. Every memory from the last 2 years suddenly looked different. Every business trip, every late night at work, every girl's weekend, every excuse, every lie. The affair hadn't started recently. It had been going on for almost 18 months. 18 months. While I worked overtime, while I coached our son's baseball team, while I paid the mortgage, while I trusted them both completely, they had been building a secret life together. And somehow I never saw it. I looked around the kitchen. Family photos lined the walls. Vacations, birthdays, Christmas mornings. All of it felt fake now, like a movie set built on lies. Then something caught my eye. A folder, hidden inside Lauren's documents. The title made my blood run cold. Future plans. I clicked it. Inside were financial documents, apartment listings, bank information, and a timeline. A literal timeline. They were planning to leave together. Ryan and Lauren intended to wait until after our youngest daughter's birthday. Then they would tell me they were in love, file for divorce, move in together, and start a new life. The cruelest part? One note said, "Ethan will probably be upset at first, but he'll get over it eventually." I stared at those words for a long time. Not angry. Not yet. Just numb. Completely numb. The man they described wasn't me. The fool they thought they were manipulating wasn't me anymore. Because in that moment, something changed. The pain was still there. The heartbreak was real. But beneath it, something else was growing. Something cold. Something focused. For 18 months, they had lied to my face. For 18 months, they thought they were smarter than me. They thought I would never find out. They thought I would simply accept whatever scraps they left behind. They were wrong. Very, very wrong. Because while they were busy planning their future together, I had just discovered a secret about Ryan that neither of them knew I knew. And that secret was about to change everything. I sat alone in the kitchen long after the messages stopped hurting. Not because the pain was gone. It wasn't. It was because my mind had shifted into survival mode. The affair was real. There was no denying it anymore. Lauren loved Ryan. Ryan loved Lauren. And together they had spent nearly 2 years turning me into the punchline of their private jokes. But while staring at the financial documents inside Lauren's laptop, something clicked in my memory. A detail. A conversation from months earlier. At the time, it had seemed insignificant. Now it felt enormous. You see, Ryan and I didn't just share a friendship. 5 years earlier, we had started a commercial construction company together. What began as a small operation grew into one of the most successful firms in Western Washington. The company was worth millions. And although Ryan handled operations, I controlled most of the financial side. Not because I wanted power, because numbers were my strength. Ryan hated paperwork. Always had. That meant I saw things he didn't think about. And 6 months earlier, I had noticed something strange. A series of expenses that didn't quite add up. Small at first. $10,000 here. $15,000 there. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that screamed fraud. But enough to raise questions. When I asked Ryan about it, he brushed it off. Accounting error, he said. I trusted him. So I let it go? Now, after discovering the affair, that memory refused to leave my head. I opened my phone, logged into the company accounting system, and started reviewing old records. At first, everything looked normal. Then I found it. A vendor account. One that had received hundreds of thousands of dollars over the past 18 months. The same 18 months Ryan had been sleeping with my wife. My heart started pounding. I dug deeper. The vendor address led nowhere. The company didn't exist. The invoices were fake. Every single one. For nearly 2 hours, I sat there connecting dots. By midnight, the picture was clear. Ryan hadn't just betrayed me personally. He'd been stealing from our company. A lot. I leaned back in my chair, stunned. The total amount exceeded $1.3 million. I checked the records again. And again, the numbers didn't change. Ryan had created shell companies, moved money through fake contracts, and hidden everything behind legitimate projects. It was sophisticated, calculated, intentional. My best friend wasn't just a cheater. He was a thief. The realization hit harder than the affair, because it meant everything I'd believed about Ryan was a lie. For 20 years, I thought I knew him. Now I wasn't sure I ever had. Around 1 in the morning, my phone buzzed. Lauren. Finally. Sorry, her text read. Dinner with coworkers ran late. I stared at the message. The lie. The effortless lie. After everything I'd just discovered. For the first time all night, I smiled. Not because I was happy, because I understood something important. They didn't know I knew. That gave me an advantage. A massive advantage. If I confronted them immediately, they'd deny everything. They'd hide evidence, move money, create excuses. No, that wasn't happening. I needed patience. I needed proof. And most importantly, I needed a plan. A few minutes later, Lauren walked through the front door. She looked beautiful. The same woman I'd fallen in love with years ago. For one painful second, I wished none of this was true. Then I remembered the voice message. "I love you, Ryan." The wish disappeared. "Hey," she said casually. "Hey, you waited up?" Couldn't sleep. She kissed my cheek, the same lips that had kissed another man hours earlier. I felt sick, but I didn't show it. She headed upstairs, never realizing I already knew everything. As I watched her leave, I made a decision. I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to scream. And I definitely wasn't going to beg. Instead, I was going to let them believe they had won, while I quietly gathered every piece of evidence, every message, every financial record, every lie, because when the truth finally came out, I wanted it to destroy the fantasy world they had built together. And by sunrise the next morning, I had already made the first phone call that would start their downfall. A phone call to someone Ryan never expected me to contact, a forensic accountant. And what she uncovered would be worse than anything I had imagined. The next morning, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lauren and Ryan together. Their messages, their photos, their plans for a future that didn't include me. But I forced myself to stay calm, because anger makes people careless. And I couldn't afford to be careless. Not now. By 9 o'clock, I was sitting in the office of a forensic accountant named Sarah Reynolds. Sarah had spent years investigating corporate fraud, embezzlement, and financial crimes. She was sharp, direct, and impossible to intimidate. Exactly what I needed. I slid a folder across her desk. "I need to know if I'm crazy," I said. She opened the file. "What am I looking for?" "I think my business partner is stealing from our company." Sarah adjusted her glasses and began reviewing the documents. For the first 10 minutes, she barely spoke. Then her expression changed, and that scared me. "What?" I asked. She looked up. "How long has this been happening?" My stomach dropped. "So I'm not imagining it." "No." She leaned back. "Not even close." Over the next several hours, Sarah dug through transaction histories, vendor payments, tax records, and project budgets. The deeper she went, the worse things became. Much worse. By late afternoon, she turned her laptop toward me. "Ethan, I need you to prepare yourself." I stared at the screen. The number displayed there didn't seem real. $3.8 million. I blinked, then looked again. Still there. $3.8 million. Gone. Missing. Stolen. For a moment, I genuinely thought there had been a mistake. There has to be an error. Sarah shook her head. "There isn't." My chest tightened. "How?" She opened another file. Because Ryan wasn't working alone. The room went silent. I stared at her. "What do you mean?" Sarah clicked another document. A bank account appeared on the screen. My heart nearly stopped. The account holder's name was Lauren Parker. My wife. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The world seemed to tilt sideways. "No." Sarah looked uncomfortable. "I'm sorry." "No." I shook my head. "No, that's impossible." But even as I said the words, I knew they weren't. The evidence was right in front of me. Wire transfers, deposits, transactions, hundreds of thousands of dollars moving into accounts connected to Lauren, over and over again, for months, maybe years. The affair wasn't separate from the theft. They were connected. Ryan hadn't simply fallen in love with my wife. The two of them had been planning a future funded by money stolen from the company I helped build. Money stolen from me. Money stolen from employees who trusted us. Money stolen from clients who believed in our business. The betrayal suddenly felt bigger, darker, more calculated. Everything I believed was gone. The marriage, the friendship, the partnership, all lies. Sarah handed me another report. "This gets worse." I almost laughed. How could it possibly get worse? Then she showed me. Ryan had secretly accumulated massive personal debt, luxury vehicles, private vacations, hidden investments, failed business ventures, millions owed to various lenders. The man was drowning financially. The affair wasn't just about love. It was also about survival. Ryan needed money. Lauren wanted a new life. Together, they found a solution. Me. I was the solution. The fool funding their future. The husband paying bills while they emptied accounts behind my back. For several minutes, I simply sat there, silent. The pain was almost unbearable. But beneath it, something else was forming. Clarity. The fog was lifting. For weeks, maybe months, I would have blamed myself. Wondered what I did wrong. Wondered why I wasn't enough. Not anymore. This wasn't about me. This wasn't a marriage failing. This wasn't two people accidentally falling in love. This was greed, manipulation, deception. They made choices. Thousands of them. Every single day. And now those choices had consequences. That evening, I drove home as the sun disappeared behind the Seattle skyline. Lauren greeted me at the door, smiling, acting normal, as if she hadn't spent years lying to my face. Long day, she asked. Very. She kissed me. I forced myself not to react. Then she said something that nearly made me lose control. Ryan called earlier. He says hi. Ryan says hi. The man stealing millions from me. Sleeping with my wife. Destroying my life. Says hi. I smiled back. Tell him I said hi too. Lauren smiled, completely unaware that the walls were already closing in around both of them. Because that night, after she fell asleep, I received an email from Sarah. Attached was the final report. And buried inside that report was one document that would allow me to destroy Ryan's entire plan in a single move. A move he never saw coming. People imagine revenge feels powerful. It doesn't. At least not in the beginning. In the beginning, it feels like grief. It feels like waking up at 3 a.m. because your chest hurts so badly you can't breathe. It feels like staring at the ceiling while the person who destroyed your life sleeps peacefully beside you. It feels like realizing that every memory you treasured now feels poisoned. That's where I was, at my absolute lowest. For nearly 2 weeks, I lived a double life. During the day, I ran meetings, signed contracts, and pretended everything was normal. At home, I smiled at Lauren. I listened to her stories. I helped our kids with homework. I sat beside her on the couch. And every second felt like torture. Because I knew. I knew where she'd been. I knew who she was texting. I knew the future she was planning behind my back. The hardest part wasn't losing her. The hardest part was losing the version of my life I thought was real. One night, I found myself sitting alone in my truck outside a grocery store. I had no reason to be there. I just couldn't go home. My hands rested on the steering wheel as rain hammered against the windshield. For the first time since discovering everything, I broke. Completely. I cried. Not quietly. Not with dignity. I cried like a man watching his entire world disappear. 13 years. Gone. 20 years of friendship. Gone. Every sacrifice. Every late night. Every dream. Gone. I remember punching the steering wheel until my hand bled. I remember asking questions that had no answers. Why? What did I do wrong? When did she stop loving me? The silence never answered. Eventually, my phone rang. It was my daughter, Emma. Dad. Her small voice immediately snapped me back to reality. Hey, sweetheart. Are you okay? I wiped my eyes quickly. Of course. You sound sad. That nearly broke me again. Children notice everything. I've just had a long day. We miss you. Mom said you're working late. I closed my eyes. Another lie. Tell your brother I'll be home soon. Okay. Then she paused. Dad, yeah. You're still my favorite person. The line went silent. And in that moment, something shifted inside me. This wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't about Lauren, or Ryan, or revenge. It was about protecting my children, protecting their future, protecting the company that provided for dozens of families. I couldn't let my pain destroy me. I had responsibilities, people counting on me. When I finally got home, I checked my email. Sarah had sent another update. The subject line caught my attention immediately. Urgent, you need to see this. I opened the attachment. And suddenly, everything changed. The document was a signed partnership agreement. One Ryan had quietly executed months earlier. At first glance, it looked routine. Then I noticed a specific clause. A very specific clause. One Ryan apparently never bothered reading carefully. The agreement stated that any partner proven guilty of financial misconduct automatically forfeited ownership rights in the company. Immediately, without compensation. I read it twice, then 3 times. My pulse quickened. Ryan thought he was stealing money while protecting his ownership stake. But if the evidence became public, he wouldn't just face criminal consequences. He would lose everything. His shares, his authority, his position, his future. The entire company would legally become mine. For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Real hope. Ryan believed he was preparing to walk away with my wife and millions of dollars. In reality, he was standing on the edge of a cliff he couldn't see. And Lauren? She had no idea. Neither of them knew how much evidence I had collected. Neither of them knew attorneys were already reviewing the documents. Neither of them knew forensic investigators had traced nearly every transaction. Most importantly, neither of them knew that I had stopped thinking like a betrayed husband. Now I was thinking like a businessman. A businessman preparing to protect everything they tried to steal. I looked upstairs toward the bedroom where Lauren was sleeping. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel heartbreak. I felt certainty. Their secret was almost over, and the next phase of my plan was about to begin. Because while Ryan thought he was in control, I had just arranged a meeting that would turn his entire world upside down. A meeting involving lawyers, board members, and evidence he couldn't explain away. And when that meeting happened, there would be nowhere left for him to run. By the time I reached my breaking point, something inside me had changed. The devastated husband who discovered those messages on Lauren's laptop was gone. In his place stood someone colder, more focused, more dangerous. Not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted justice. There was a difference. Over the next 3 weeks, I became the best actor of my life. Every morning, I kissed Lauren goodbye. Every evening, I asked about her day. I laughed at dinner, played board games with the kids, attended neighborhood barbecues. To everyone watching, I was the same Ethan Parker I'd always been. But behind the scenes, I was building a case. And brick by brick, Ryan's world was collapsing. The attorneys moved quickly. The forensic reports were airtight. Every fake invoice, every fraudulent vendor, every hidden transfer, every stolen dollar. The evidence was overwhelming. The company's board members were shocked when they saw the files. Most of them had known Ryan for years. Several refused to believe it at first. Then the numbers spoke for themselves. One board member actually removed his glasses and whispered, "My God." Another simply stared at the reports, unable to say a word. I understood how they felt. I'd lived through that same disbelief. The hardest part wasn't accepting the facts. The hardest part was accepting the person responsible. Meanwhile, Ryan remained completely unaware. In fact, he seemed happier than ever. More confident. More relaxed. One Friday afternoon, he walked into my office carrying 2 coffees. "Thought you could use this." I looked up from my desk. There he was. My best friend. The man who had stolen from me, lied to me, and slept with my wife. Smiling like nothing was wrong. "Thanks." He sat down. "We should take the families to the lake this summer." The lake. That damn lake. The same place he'd taken Lauren behind my back. For a moment, I wondered if he was mocking me. But no, Ryan genuinely believed he had gotten away with everything. "Maybe," I said. He grinned. "Good times, right?" I stared at him, and suddenly I realized something important. Ryan didn't feel guilty. Not even a little. People like him never do. They justify everything. Convince themselves they're victims. Rewrite reality until their selfish choices seem reasonable. In his mind, he probably believed he deserved Lauren. Deserved the money. Deserved the future he was stealing. That realization erased the last traces of sympathy I had left. After he left my office, I called Sarah. "We're ready." There was a brief silence. Then she said, "Are you sure?" I looked out the window. Rain was falling across downtown Seattle. The city looked gray and distant, like the life I used to have. Yes. The investigation officially moved forward that day. Lawyers prepared legal filings. Financial institutions received notices. The board scheduled an emergency meeting. And quietly, without Ryan knowing, access permissions inside the company began changing. The trap was closing. Then something unexpected happened. 3 nights later, Lauren made a mistake. A huge mistake. She left her phone on the kitchen counter while taking a shower. Normally, I ignored it. At that point, I already knew enough. But the screen lit up, and one message appeared. From Ryan. "Everything is almost ready. We just need a few more weeks." My jaw tightened. I picked up the phone. For the first time, I opened their conversation directly. What I found made my blood run cold. They weren't planning to leave eventually. They were planning to leave soon. Very soon. In fact, they had chosen a specific date. 2 weeks away. Lauren intended to file divorce papers. Ryan intended to resign from the company. And together they planned to disappear to Arizona using money they had secretly moved into offshore accounts. My heart pounded. The timing couldn't have been more perfect, because the board meeting was scheduled for the day before their planned escape. The irony was almost unbelievable. They thought they were preparing their grand exit. In reality, they were walking straight into a disaster they couldn't avoid. That night, I barely slept. Not because I was worried, because I knew what was coming. For weeks, I'd been gathering evidence, building leverage, creating a strategy. Now the moment had finally arrived. The next day, I received confirmation from our attorneys. Everything was approved. Everything was ready. Ryan would be called into the board meeting, presented with the evidence, removed from the company, and immediately referred for criminal investigation. As for Lauren, her surprise was waiting right behind his. For the first time in nearly a month, I smiled. Not because I was happy, because the end was finally in sight. And in less than 48 hours, the two people who thought they had outsmarted me were about to learn just how badly they had underestimated me. The morning of the board meeting felt strangely calm. After weeks of anger, heartbreak, and sleepless nights, I expected to feel nervous. Instead, I felt nothing. No fear, no rage, just clarity. The truth was finally about to come out, and there was nothing Ryan could do to stop it. I arrived at the office before sunrise. The city was still waking up as I stepped off the elevator and walked toward the executive conference room. Inside, several attorneys were already setting up documents. Board members quietly reviewed financial reports. Sarah sat near the end of the table, her laptop open. When she saw me, she nodded. "We're ready." I took a deep breath. Good. At exactly 9 o'clock, Ryan walked in, smiling, confident, completely unaware of what was waiting for him. "What's all this?" he joked. "Looks serious." Nobody laughed. The smile on his face faded slightly. He looked around the room, then at me, then back at the attorneys. I could almost see the confusion forming inside his head. One of the board members cleared his throat. "Ryan, please have a seat." Ryan sat down slowly. For the first time, I saw uncertainty in his eyes. The chairman opened the meeting. "We have completed a financial investigation into company transactions dating back 3 years. Ryan's expression changed instantly. Not panic, not yet, but concern. The chairman continued. "The findings are extremely serious." Sarah connected her laptop to the screen. A spreadsheet appeared. Rows and rows of transactions. Transfers. Fake vendors. Shell companies. Everything. Ryan stared at the screen. His face turned pale. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Ryan laughed nervously. "There has to be some mistake." Sarah spoke calmly. "There isn't." Another slide appeared. Bank records. Electronic transfers. Vendor registrations. Every piece of evidence carefully organized. Every lie documented. Every stolen dollar accounted for. The room remained silent as the evidence piled up. Ryan stopped speaking, stopped moving, stopped pretending. The confidence he'd carried for months disappeared right in front of us. Then came the final slide. The total amount, $3.8 million. A board member slammed his hand against the table. Another shook his head in disbelief. The chairman looked directly at Ryan. "Do you have an explanation?" Ryan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. For the first time in 20 years, he had no words. Then he looked at me, really looked at me, and suddenly he understood. I knew. Everything. The affair. The theft. The lies. All of it. His face went white. "Ethan." I said nothing. He tried again. "Ethan, listen." "No." The single word cut through the room. Ryan stopped talking. I leaned forward. "You had months to explain." Silence. "You had years." His eyes filled with panic. Not regret. Panic. Because he finally realized the game was over. One attorney slid a document across the table. The forfeiture agreement. The clause Ryan never bothered reading carefully. The same clause that would cost him everything. The chairman spoke. "Effective immediately, your ownership rights are terminated." Ryan stared at the paper. His hands trembled. "No. It is already done." "No." His voice cracked. "You can't do this." The attorney answered calmly. "We legally can." The reality hit him like a truck. No ownership. No shares. No authority. No company. Nothing. Everything he'd spent years trying to steal vanished in a matter of minutes. Then came the final blow. The chairman looked at him. "Law enforcement has been notified." The room became completely silent. Ryan's eyes widened. For the first time that day, genuine fear appeared. The kind of fear that can't be hidden. The kind that comes when someone realizes consequences are finally real. He looked at me again, almost pleading, almost begging. But I felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Not happiness. Nothing. Because the man sitting across from me wasn't my best friend anymore. Maybe he hadn't been for a very long time. The meeting ended shortly afterward. Security escorted Ryan from the building. Employees watched through office windows as he walked out carrying a small cardboard box. The same man who once believed he controlled everything. Now he had nothing. I stood near the window and watched him leave. Part of me expected to feel victorious. Instead, I felt sad. Not for Ryan. For the friendship I thought we had. For the years that turned out to be lies. For the trust that could never be repaired. My phone buzzed. A text message. From Lauren. Ryan just called me. What happened? I stared at the screen. For weeks, she'd believed she was one step ahead of me. She had no idea her own reckoning was about to begin. Because Ryan's downfall was only the first half of the story. And that evening, Lauren would finally learn exactly how much I knew. I arrived home just after sunset. The sky above Seattle was painted in shades of orange and gray, but I barely noticed. My focus was entirely on what waited inside the house. Lauren. For weeks, I had carried the weight of the truth alone. For weeks, I had smiled while she lied, pretended while she cheated, listened while she planned a future with another man. Tonight, that ended. The moment I stepped through the front door, I knew something was wrong. Lauren was standing in the kitchen, arms crossed, phone in her hand. Her face was pale, anxious, scared. Good. For the first time in a long time, she finally understood that something was happening beyond her control. What happened to Ryan? She demanded. No greeting, no smile, no pretending, just panic. I set my keys on the counter. What did he tell you? He said there was some kind of investigation. I nodded. There was. Lauren stared at me, waiting. The silence stretched between us. Then she said the words she'd probably rehearsed all afternoon. Ethan, what's going on? I looked directly into her eyes and finally said it. I know. Her face instantly lost all color. For a second, she didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. I know about you and Ryan. The room went completely silent. I watched her carefully. Every emotion flashed across her face. Shock, fear, denial, panic. Then came the lie. Ethan, it's not. Stop. She froze. I reached into my briefcase and placed a thick stack of papers on the kitchen table. Phone records, messages, bank transfers, photos, financial reports. The entire truth. Page after page. Evidence she couldn't explain away. Evidence she couldn't deny. Lauren looked down at the documents, then back at me. And for the first time in 13 years, I saw genuine terror in her eyes. You went through my laptop. No. I shook my head. You destroyed our marriage. That's what happened. Tears immediately filled her eyes. But they didn't affect me anymore. A month earlier, maybe. Not now. You don't understand. I laughed. Actually laughed. The sound surprised both of us. I understand perfectly. Her shoulders began trembling. Ethan, please. No. I stepped closer. You told him you loved him. She looked away. You stole money from our company. More silence. You planned to leave with him. A tear rolled down her cheek. Still silence. Because there was nothing left to say. The truth was sitting on the table between us. Undeniable. Permanent. Real. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Then Lauren whispered something I never expected. I never meant for this to happen. I stared at her. After everything. After years of lies. That was her explanation. You didn't mean for what to happen. More tears. I didn't mean to hurt you. The words hit me harder than I expected. Because for the first time, I realized she genuinely believed that. She thought intentions mattered more than actions. She thought feeling guilty somehow erased the damage. But life doesn't work that way. Choices have consequences. Every single one. You hurt me anyway. Lauren covered her face and finally broke down. Not the controlled crying I'd seen during arguments before. Real crying. Messy. Desperate. The kind that comes when someone's world collapses. But there was still one thing she didn't know. One final truth. I slid another document across the table. She looked down, and her eyes widened. The divorce papers. Already signed. Already prepared. Already filed. I spoke to my attorney last week. Lauren stared at the papers, completely speechless. Then came the final blow. The one she never saw coming. The money has been traced. Her head snapped upward. The investigators found everything. The blood drained from her face. Every transfer, every account, every hidden payment. Found, documented, recorded. The fantasy she'd built with Ryan was gone. Destroyed. In a single day? For several minutes, neither of us spoke. The house felt strangely quiet, like a storm had finally passed. Then Lauren whispered the question she'd been avoiding. What happens now? I looked toward the hallway, toward the family photos hanging on the wall, toward the life we'd spent 13 years building. Then I answered honestly. Now we live with our choices. And for the first time since discovering the affair, I walked away. Not angry, not broken, free. But the story wasn't over yet. Because 6 months later, something happened that neither Ryan nor Lauren could have predicted. Something that changed my life forever. 6 months after my life fell apart, I was standing on a beach in Oregon watching the sun rise over the Pacific Ocean. The waves rolled gently against the shore. The air was cool, peaceful, for the first time in a very long time. So was I? If you had told me 6 months earlier that I'd eventually feel grateful for everything that happened, I would have called you insane. Back then, I thought my life was over. I thought losing Lauren would destroy me. I thought Ryan's betrayal would haunt me forever. I was wrong. The truth is, some endings save you from futures you were never meant to have. The divorce had been finalized 3 months earlier. It wasn't easy. There were attorneys, negotiations, and difficult conversations. But in the end, the facts spoke louder than emotions. The evidence was overwhelming. The court records were clear. The financial investigation continued, and both Ryan and Lauren were forced to face the consequences of their decisions. As for Ryan, his downfall was complete. Criminal charges related to financial fraud were filed. Several assets were frozen. Most of his investments disappeared. The luxury lifestyle he'd spent years building vanished almost overnight. The man who once thought he was smarter than everyone ended up losing nearly everything. Ironically, the future he stole so much to create never happened. Because once the money disappeared, so did the fantasy. Lauren and Ryan's relationship collapsed within months. The same secrets and lies that brought them together eventually tore them apart. Neither trusted the other anymore. How could they? Their entire relationship had been built on betrayal. If someone can lie with you, they can lie to you. That lesson eventually caught up with both of them. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened to me. I started healing. Not immediately, not dramatically, slowly, one day at a time. I spent more time with my kids. Emma and Jacob became my focus. We took road trips, went camping, attended baseball games, created new traditions. For years, I had been so focused on work that I didn't realize how many moments I was missing. Now I noticed everything. Every laugh, every conversation, every memory. The company also recovered. Once Ryan was removed, the atmosphere changed completely. Trust returned. Employees felt safer. Projects improved. The business actually grew faster than before. Several board members later admitted they had feared the company wouldn't survive the scandal. Instead, it became stronger. So did I. Then came the biggest surprise of all. About 4 months after the divorce, I met someone. Her name was Natalie Brooks. It wasn't some dramatic movie moment. No romantic music. No instant sparks. We met at a charity fundraiser. Started talking. Then kept talking. Natalie knew my story. Most people in our professional circles did by then. But she never treated me like a victim. And she never tried to rescue me. She simply treated me like a person. A man rebuilding his life. A man learning who he was outside of pain. For the first time in years, I found myself laughing without forcing it. Smiling without pretending. Looking forward to tomorrow. One evening, while watching the sunset with Natalie, she asked me a question. If you could go back and stop all of it, would you? The answer surprised even me. I thought about Lauren, Ryan, the affair, the lies, the heartbreak, the sleepless nights. Then I shook my head. No. Natalie looked at me curiously. Why? I smiled. Because I finally understood. If none of that happened, I'd still be living a lie. The truth hurt, but it also set me free. Lauren didn't destroy my life. She revealed the reality of it. Ryan didn't take my future. He exposed the people who never deserved a place in it. What felt like the worst thing that ever happened to me eventually became the reason I built something better. That's the lesson I want anyone watching this story to remember. Betrayal can break your heart, but it doesn't have to break your future. Sometimes the people who walk out of your life are making room for the people who belong in it. Sometimes losing what you thought you wanted is the first step toward finding what you actually need. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's healing. It's succeeding. It's becoming so happy that the people who hurt you no longer control your story. As I watched the sun disappear beyond the ocean horizon, Emma ran across the beach laughing while Jacob chased her through the sand. Natalie smiled beside me. The future stretched out ahead. Bright, peaceful, real, and for the first time in a very long time. I couldn't wait to see what came next.